I have to get used to this little new setup that we have today. This is a little crazy for me.
Is it?
In a good way.
All right.
In a good way.
Whatever you say, Chief.
Whatever I say. Welcome to Florida.
No kidding. That's Louisiana too.
It drives my wife up a wall.
Yeah.
Welcome to Florida. And
That's
then my daughter is throwing up her stuff.
I was wondering what that was.
That's small compared to what we have in Louisiana.
Right? Like
They're like 4 times that big.
I know. It's totally crazy. It's insane. Hey everybody. I have someone that I'm chatting with off camera here. And you'll see him in a second. Let me actually bring everybody up all at one time. Now, Morley, I'm going to give him a better screenshot because he's off screen right now, but that's okay. He's kind of, I'm getting Dr.Loz like on the shot. As people jump on, let's give it a few minutes here. This is definitely a different camera view than everyone is used to. So we have Kristen's out there. She's in Southeast Washington.
Sweet.
Washington State.
Yep.
Belu out in California. It is a little echoey. What can I do? I'm in my house.
It's a little what?
Echoey, just because.
Oh, echoey. Sure. Yeah.
Because
Right.
I'm in my house.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Jason Dean. It's Brave TV from my dining room. Why my dining room? Because I have a very special guest today, Morley Robbins and his wife, Dr. Liz. Thanks for both being here, literally in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Delighted to be here. Thrilled to be here. It's taken 5 years.
5 years, is that what it is?
Yeah.
5 years we've been chatting off and on. And
Can you see Morley?
I can.
Oh yeah.
Right here, Morley there, screen 2. And he's looking at me, that's why he's looking up the camera.
Do you want me to look at the camera? Or
If you want to, but it's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Here's a few what do they call it? Just taking care of the small stuff in the beginning. The audio won't be perfect. I'm literally in my dining room, and I have a very big house that will echo. So we'll deal with that, and I hope you guys mostly can hear it all well. And we're gonna have some fun because this right here, Morley, how many years have you been working on this?
11 years. But
11.
But 2 years to actually write it and get it into its physical form.
How much passion to be working on a book for 11 years, and it's pretty thick too. He's not messing around because is this 11 years of sitting in front of peer-reviewed articles every single morning?
Every single morning, 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if there's anyone in the audience that wants to write a book, please call me first, and I'll try to talk you out of it.
So give us the inspiration. Like, we have a lot of new viewers too.
Okay, that's great.
So give us the inspiration. Like, what took you on this journey? How did you get here? You used to be magnesium, and then you wrote this, and it's copper. And some people are like, wait, I thought you were doing. Like, just give us a background.
Yeah, quick thumbnail sketch. Born into a very sickly family. My sister became a nurse, so I was supposed to become the doctor. And then go to college with the ease and expectation that, well, yeah, I'll just become a doctor, not knowing you actually have to study to become a doctor. And that was not my strength when I was in college. So I was only rejected by 18 medical schools. So when that happened, I said, okay, maybe I'll go a different route. So I went to business school so I could become a hospital executive. Because if you can't be a doctor, you become a hospital exec and boss the doctors around. So I did that. Did that for 12 years. Was a consultant for 20 years. And when you're a consultant, you're traveling all over the country. So I was pulling a suitcase behind my back for 20 years. And I developed what's called frozen shoulder. Couldn't pick my hand up above my waist. And it was very painful. I couldn't sleep. Went to a health food store that I'd known for many years and asked the folks that worked there, I said, what do you have for a frozen shoulder? And they all said, you need to go see Dr. Liz. And I went, I don't do witchcraft. Just give me some supplements.
I don't do witchcraft.
Just give me some supplements. And 2 months later, I was in writhing pain. Nothing was cutting through. Wasn't sleeping. Went back to the health food store. Went up to the owner, And she said, looked me right in the eye. She said, Morley, we love you. Go see Dr. Liz. So with my tail between my legs, I went to see Dr. Liz, and the rest is history, because she solved my frozen shoulder by focusing on the joint inside my mouth. What's it? TMJ
TMJ,
joint. But she was pushing from the inside, and as she pushed, my arm lifted. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever gone through. And in that first encounter, she used this phrase that I'd never heard before. She talked about the innate healer. And I looked at her. I didn't say anything at the time. And I thought, if there's an innate healer, why do we have hundreds of thousands of doctors around the world? And so I set out to find out who the innate healer is. And guess what? I wrote about it in this book. Because we all have the innate healer. And it's absolutely amazing what bioavailable copper does to enable hundreds and hundreds of enzymes to work in our body. And it's why we're here on this planet. We'll probably get into that. But it's a very special relationship that we have between oxygen and iron and copper. And we are totally dependent on that relationship. And the tragedy is, it's not taught in doctor school. Doctors are not taught about minerals. Doctors are not taught about oxygen. Doctors are not taught about energy. And doctors are not taught about parasites that mess up oxygen and minerals. And so it's been a fascinating process to kind of piece together this mosaic of information. And what I've used as my resource is...
They're busy people. Cell phones go off. It's okay. That's why we love this method.
I go back to the base research. I go back to the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s to find out what the great scientists of that time were saying. Because they had a very different focus back then than we have today. The scientists today are paid what to say.
Right.
Back then they really wanted to know what's going on. What is the basis of life? And they really want to understand how is energy made. And the part that is, I think, really important for people to realize is that in the early research, like 1910 to 1940, the obsession was between copper and iron. And really trying to understand what is happening inside the mitochondria to enable energy to be produced. Zinc was not even on the radar screen. And the greats like Otto Warburg and Heinrich Wieland and David Kylan and Albert Sven-Gorgy and people of that stature, these are all Nobel laureates. Paul Ehrlich, these are luminaries in the history of medicine. They were obsessed with copper and iron and oxygen. And they were trying to figure out what's the magic between those. And it's fascinating to piece it together and really realize how simple it really is.
So these are names that you just named off that no one's for the most part heard of. There might be a name you caught here or there when you hear Warburg.
Right.
But all these people did amazing work, and yet today they're essentially wiped from the history books. I mean, because they were onto it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They had integrity because they really want to understand how does this human organism really thrive. They really wanted to study it. What's come to light, though, it's actually very interesting. This might surprise some of your followers. When people hear the word cancer, or if they're told you have cancer, the C word, people freak out. Because we've been conditioned, we've been programmed to think of cancer means death. Well, it's not the condition, it's the treatment that causes the death. 95% of the people who die from cancer die from starvation. They don't die from the cancer. And what I read a couple weeks ago, which actually surprised me, was to find out that cancer cells do not attack healthy cells. That's good to know. I've never heard that. But the thing is, what's really important is that I've read hundreds of articles about cancer treatment, studying different metabolic pathways. And it's a classic case of bait and switch. They're using the cancer cell as the decoy to say, how do we kill human cells? Because we're so conditioned to think we've got to kill the cancer. Well, what is cancer? Cancer is like adolescents becoming drug addicts. They behave differently, right? Well,
Yeah.
if we know that someone is a drug addict, do we take them out and shoot them? No.
You gotta educate them. You gotta rehab it.
Exactly. And so what we've been metabolism, 2 miles per gallon. It's a completely different metabolism.
No one has ever heard that before. What you just said there, like putting it into kind of, I guess, terms
That we
like
can relate
miles
to.
per gallon, etc.
Right.
Because that turns light bulbs on for people.
Jason, I've read 7,000 articles. How many have I read that laid out how much energy is given off in metabolizing fat? One article out of 7,000 told the truth about what was happening.
That's criminal.
I think it is. Yeah, absolutely. And so we're conditioned. Again, people don't realize the programming that we're under. I think maybe a lot of your followers do, but most people don't realize that all the conditioning is around, we've got to burn glucose in the mitochondria. Well, guess what doesn't flow well through glucose? Electrons. What runs the mitochondria? The movement of electrons.
I laugh right now because I have a diagram that we were given by Cellcore,
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
And it's the Krebs cycle,
Yep.
right?
Right.
Kicking out electrons, going over to ATP. And if you
No.
just look at that,
Yeah.
and you take that and match that with what you just said, game's over.
Right.
We have every answer. There's healthcare.
That's right.
And it's been taken from everybody, and it's been complicated, so no one will look into it. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the people that really inspired me, many people probably have heard of Jerry Tennant down in Dallas, former ophthalmologist. He's the guy that perfected laser surgery for eye conditions. And he got almost died from the illness that he got from all of the fumes coming up and stuff. But he was sick for about 7 or 8 years. And he finally figured out, if I can make one cell work, I can make them all work. Well, that's a very inspiring model. And that's what's been driving me for years and years is, what is it that makes one mitochondria work? Because if we can make one mitochondria work, then we can make 40 quadrillion mitochondria work. So people don't realize the numbers involved. We all can go back to our high school biology textbook, and there's a picture of a cell, and there might be 1 or 2 mitochondria in the cell. The average cell has 500 mitochondria. The average liver cell has 2,000 mitochondria. The average heart cell has 10,000 mitochondria.
Each cell. That's not 10,000 in the heart.
No.
That's in each cell, which there's
Bazillions.
zillions of cells. Let's use a big word.
So then, let's go inside the mature egg in a woman's body, the oocyte. You're sitting down, right? 600,000 mitochondria. Do you think that might be why women get PMS? It's because they're not making enough energy?
And we wonder why. We wonder why there's women health problems.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And ladies, if you're out there listening, we wonder why there's female health problems. Repeat what you just said.
The mature egg in a woman's body, the oocyte, needs 600,000 mitochondria to work properly to support life. It's the very basis of life. And so then we get to the brain. So the only section of the brain that I've found numbers for mitochondria is the substantia nigra. Substantia nigra means substantially black, which means it's really dependent on copper. It's one of the 3 copper centers in the brain. And the neurons, just to really freak everyone out, are as long as our arm. The neurons are 3 feet long. 2 million mitochondria per neuron.
2 million mitochondria per neuron, which are 3 feet long.
And there's 990,000 neurons in the substantia nigra. Let me go.
You might be onto something here.
Yeah, and when the designation of Parkinson's is finally classified, 2/3 of those neurons are dead.
And I think of any neurological disorder, and I start thinking of heavy metals, nanometals, chemicals.
There's only one metal we need to worry about: iron. Iron.
The rust.
The rust. Iron accumulates in our body from cradle to grave. There's only 2 reasons why women outlive men. Did you know that? Only 2 reasons.
We do dumb stuff.
Women are smarter. That's right. Yes, we do dumb stuff. But women have a monthly blood loss. And that's why women live longer. No offense. It's biological. And what's the terminal destination for iron and oxygen in the body? It's the mitochondria. And if you can't recycle iron in the mitochondria the way it's supposed to, and if you can't recycle oxygen, turn it back into water, which it needs to be, because it's actually the pH of the mitochondria needs to be 7.0. Why is that so important? Because the pH of the mitochondria allows water to form, and when a pH is 7, the ADP can go over to complex 5 to become ATP, and then we have energy. It's really simple.
You just made me think of something, which is we have so many women today who I see them physically and also virtually, but as well as you do. How many of them have because you say the menses, right? That
Sure.
They're getting rid of blood versus what we don't. And so many of them are having a problem with that blood coming out, whether it's heavy, not enough, light, clumping, we have endometriosis, etc. And then it just starts making so much sense. Wait, the iron.
The iron is gumming up the works. The bookends of menses, amenorrhea, or hemorrhaging, it's lack of regulation. And guess who's running the show? Guess who's managing all of that? It's called copper. And the guy who wrote about it,
Dr. Liz. Dr. Liz has lived with copper for how long now, Dr. Liz?
Forever.
it's her fault. She started it. She's my mineral midwife. So the thing is, Dale Shusky. There is a guy, Dale A. Shusky, is the guy that figured all this out in the 1980s. And it's called microcirculation. And we're living it today in the modern era, and it's called COVID. It's the exact same problem. It's just a different part of the body. We're talking about lungs and other tissue, but it's the exact same crisis. And what is COVID? COVID, we just have to spell it a little bit differently. COV stands for copper's vanished, ding, ding, ding. And ID stands for iron's dysregulated. Well, what happened to the copper? The virus or whatever the pathogen is has been designed to pull copper out of the tissue. It's the only way it works. And all of the symptoms that people have, either with COVID or with the jab, are all related to those 2 metals being in total dysregulation.
You mentioned something before we went on. I think he said this before on the show, but I want to go back over this because it really connects everything. Because we also said there's this problem the last 2 years where people were in fear, right? And fear, I mean, hey, psychosomatic illness, 80+%, if not, more, who knows at this point,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But they're in fear of this invisible enemy, right? But what does fear stand for? I love this.
I spell it differently. It's Fe-AR. That way you see the symbol for iron. So iron attracts rust. And it's important for people to understand how important that is. And the reason why I use this title, Cure.
Put it get right up there. There you go.
Okay. Here's my cure. And a lawyer friend of mine said, "You sure you want to say that?" I said, "Yeah." I'm
Yeah,
not sure."
absolutely. 100% I want to say it.
Because Cu is a symbol for copper, and copper, bioavailable copper, is what runs the show, and it's what brings the cure. People don't know that. People don't realize how. I think if the masses really knew what's happened over the last century to change farming practices, to change food processing practices, and to change pharmaceutical practices, those three industries are all owned by the same people, just so you know that. But they have conspired to eliminate copper in the soil, in our food, and in our tissue. Why? Because they don't like the useless eaters on the planet.
The diet, man. We have awesome people popping in today on the feed, and Nicolette is one of them. So she works with me directly, and I think she was actually partially led to working with me, literally working like with Brave TV, because she was given those iron tablets for pregnancy by the doctor.
Oh, sure.
And you were one of her wake-up calls.
Oh, wow.
To realize that this whole game is rigged, and the food has been changed. The food has been completely altered. I mean, I have farmers that are coming on here talking about regenerative farming and going, we have to change everything back because we've lost all of it.
Right.
The food you're eating doesn't have that nourishment anymore.
And where the real nexus of the problem is, healthy soil has 6 fungi for every bacteria. That's the healthy population of the soil. Today, in a commercial farm, the soil, it's 1 to 1. 1 fungus to 1 bacteria. And why are the fungus important? Because those are the heavy lifters putting minerals into the root system.
They also communicate.
Exactly.
There's a network it's an internet network underneath the ground of communication, and you take out the fungus and you take out that communication line.
And what's really interesting is, are you ready for the question?
I'm never ready for what you're going to drop on me.
What shiny metal do you think the fungi need in order to make sure the plant lives?
Morley always asks me a question. He'll go, "What metal or mineral do you think that's?" And I go, "I'm gonna go with copper."
Yeah, ding, ding, ding. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Guess what copper needs in order to really work well? It's got to have sunlight and oxygen. Oh my God!
We have a plethora of sunlight coming into this room right now. To the point where I had to block some to go on Morley. You're gonna get a suntan during the thing. But they told us that stuff's bad for us.
Yeah, exactly. Causes cancer, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, but copper is what allows us to literally breathe at the molecular level. It literally changes oxygen into water. And so what people need to understand is that there was a time when there was no oxygen on this planet. That's kind of hard for some people to understand.
I remember we had this conversation over a phone a while ago. And it was like, I figured something out. I'm like, what? There's no oxygen. Like, take us down that road.
Well, and this really comes, I had an opportunity to meet with a very noted consultant for the natural food industry. His name is Michael Greenberg. And they're always asked, Michael, what's new? What's new? And he said, Morley, what I've learned is to ask, what's enduring? And from that conversation, I began to look back in time to say, so what's been on the planet for a long time? And it turns out that it wasn't oxygen, wasn't always here. And in fact, oxygen didn't come on the scene until about 3 billion years ago. And what happened? Photosynthesis started taking place with what are called cyanobacteria, blue bacteria, cyano. That's important. That's a really big deal, cyanobacteria. And oxygen started to creep into the water, into the primordial sea, but then it started to get into the atmosphere. And when there was 0.1% of oxygen in the atmosphere, it killed 99% of life on the planet because it was all anaerobic.
That'll make you think different about history now.
And so what happened back then, again, a long time ago, was 3 chemicals came on the scene. One of them is called multi-copper oxidases, MCOs. And they're real important because they turn oxygen into water in one fell swoop. And it's absolutely fascinating to understand how it happens, but it does happen. And so hydrogens and electrons get on the oxygen, and they become O2 becomes 2H2O. It's amazing, but it's why we're here. But another chemical came on the scene called melatonin. It's not a sleep hormone, folks. It's one of the master antioxidants that runs our body. It's made in all mitochondria. Again, we have 40 quadrillion of those.
Melatonin was a very common product thrown into potential things that could help after COVID and the jab.
Exactly. But just don't take melatonin with ascorbic acid.
No. It was more because people don't realize it will go in and clean up. It's antioxidant actually goes in. It's not just if the sleep thing is.
Yeah, but again, it's all mitochondria make melatonin. It's a real big deal. And what is melatonin? It's derivative of serotonin. It's 2,000 times more powerful than T3. People can't even comprehend what melatonin. It's like it's hard to get your head around that. And then there was a third chemical that came on the scene. Again, we're going way back in time. It's called cholesterol. And it takes 11 molecules.
That stuff's bad for you, Morley.
That's what I've heard.
Come on. The medical doctors say it's going to kill you. Give you heart disease.
It takes 11 molecules of oxygen to make 1 molecule of cholesterol. Cholesterol is an oxygen sink. Why does cholesterol build? Because you don't have enough copper to metabolize the oxygen. So the body says, got you covered, man. Let's build up the cholesterol. Why does cholesterol become a problem? What they forgot to tell us is that cholesterol can get rusty. And in the presence of iron that's not being recycled properly because there's not enough copper, the cholesterol gets rusty and then it turns to plaque. And what's the number one product on planet Earth now? Statins.
Yeah, if you've never heard me talk about statins, folks, it's been a while. Man, it's top. I mean, I don't want to say top 3, top 5, but one of the worst medications they ever made, and they want everyone on it. If your cholesterol is anywhere above 200, it could be 201.
Exactly.
They want you on a statin.
Yep, absolutely. And what does it do? It kills CoQ10, which is a critical electron carrier in our mitochondria. It's got a relationship to copper, of course. They don't tell you that. And statins will just totally mess up the mitochondria. Totally mess them up. And so...
And weren't designed for women.
And as Dr. Sinatra, can't think of his first name. Stephen Sinatra, thank you. In his book, Metabolic Cardiology, you want to read a good book besides this one, but a great book is Metabolic Cardiology, and he has a chapter and he says, statins were designed for men, not for women. Don't ever take a statin if you're a woman. And it's the first thing he does with female clients is take them off statins. First thing.
So take us a little deeper because we're gonna have a million questions on this. So
you're kidding.
Obviously, I routinely joke. Hey, if you're a doctor out there, if you actually care and you want to help people, I routinely joke that take a topic and you could build a practice of helping people off of any topic, whether it's women who have no energy, practice builder right there. Right. Statins, practice builder.
Absolutely.
Autism, practice builder. Like you could specialize in one thing and have a practice builder. So you just said statins, and you just dropped the bomb. Women should, obviously we don't want men on them either, but women, it wasn't even intended for you.
No.
And it literally will destroy you, correct?
Absolutely. And the purpose of the title, Cure Your Fatigue, is that all chronic conditions, it doesn't matter what it is in the Merck manual, every one of them begins with energy deficiency. And once there's energy deficiency, you're not turning oxygen into water, you're turning oxygen into rust. And so that creates fatigue. So what we're trying to do, but the whole basis of the work that I do and the training around the root cause protocol is ignore the enemies, ignite the energy. And what's important for people to realize is that when you have an optimal energy production in your body, you don't have pathogens to worry about, because pathogens exist in a low energy environment. And where did we learn that? Jerry Tennant is the guy who taught us that. That's his brilliance, is he understands the role of energy to solve the problem. I might quibble with him about how to get there, but the point is, everyone has a slightly different perspective. And what I'm really focusing on is this, again, the root of the problem. And the biggest threat to humanity has been the loss of copper in our diet and the loss of copper in our tissue. It's absolutely axiomatic of why we're all so sick.
I can
And the buildup of iron.
and the buildup of iron. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I can back up what you just say, because we have people that come in and go, I had Epstein-Barr virus, I had this virus, I had that virus, etc. And I tend to, my bedside manner is a little different than other people, but I go, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Right.
I don't care about the virus, the exosome, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
Well, what do you mean? Because that's not the problem.
No.
The virus, the bacteria, the fungus, etc., is literally just sitting there because something in the system is the only pathogen that I'll even go after is the parasitic situation, because it's overtaken everything.
Right.
But you're not draining. You're not going to the bathroom. You're not. There's no energy in the cell. If you don't have energy in a cell, you're gonna have viruses and bacteria and everything jump all over the place. But they're not the source of the problem. The source of the problem is
Energy.
you have something holding it down, maybe a metal or whatever, and energy is not working. Your ATP are not being created.
Yeah. So let me build on that, because that's a really important point in what Dr. Loz was saying about the iron. Because everyone keys in on all the heavy metals. And I take the stance, there's only one heavy metal we really need to worry about, and that's iron. And most people don't know. They think the meme that runs medicine on this planet is you're anemic and you're copper toxic. We've all heard it. We've all been admonished by our practitioners. And the thing is, there's a very important study that was done at the University of Wisconsin in Madison in 1928. That was the center of lipidology back in the 30s and 40s. But prior to that, in 1928, a team of scientists led by Dr. Hart, they decided they were going to deny rodents copper in their diet just to see what would happen. They were just curious to see what's going to happen. And lo and behold, what did happen when they took copper out of the diet, there was a massive buildup of iron in the liver of these animals. 1928. Hart, Steinbach, Waddell, and LVM were the four scientists, and it's one of the most important studies done on this planet because it codifies the importance of copper to regulate iron. We're not taught that. Let's fast forward to 2021. January. Two scientists, Lee and Gonzalez, decided to stress test this study. And so they identify the 10 iron regulating genes to see which one of those 10 or which of those 10 is affected by copper deficiency. And so they have the ability to measure the activity of the genes, and they take the copper out, and there was only one gene that took off like a rocket. And it's called gene 28. That was the center of